The first team meeting was chaotic. Sarah spread papers across the conference table, pointing at diagrams and equations while speaking rapidly. The key is understanding that quantum resonance is not actually stable. It just looks stable because we measure it wrong. If we introduce a harmonic dampener at precisely the right frequency, we can capture the bleed-off energy and redirect it. Vexus shifted his form to grow extra eyes, studying the calculations. This should not work. The harmonic frequencies would destabilize the entire system. Only if you use conventional dampeners, Sarah countered. I am proposing we build custom ones using principles from musical acoustics. There was a long silence. Finally, Corthel spoke, using 3 of his 6 brains simultaneously. Did you just suggest we fix advanced quantum generators using concepts from primitive sound production? Sarah grinned. Yes, sound waves and quantum waves follow similar mathematical patterns. Humans figured this out about 300 years ago. We have been using acoustic principles in quantum computing since the 22nd century. The team looked at me. I performed the equivalent of a shrug with my upper appendages. She solved the impossible problem. Perhaps we should listen. The testing phase. Building the prototype took 6 weeks of intensive work. Sarah pushed the team hard, often staying in the lab for 20-hour stretches without sleep. I had to remind her several times that humans needed rest, to which she always replied, "I am fine, Professor. This is nothing compared to finals week at university." I decided not to ask what finals week entailed. Some human customs were better left mysterious. The prototype was small, about the size of a transport container, but it represented months of theoretical work compressed into physical form. The team gathered around it nervously, except for Sarah, who looked excited. "Ready?" she asked, hand hovering over the activation controls. "Wait," Vexus said, his form rippling with anxiety. "Should we not run more simulations first? If this fails catastrophically, it could damage the entire sector." Sarah checked her calculations one more time. "The math is solid, trust me." Those 2 words, trust me, spoken with absolute confidence by someone who had already rewritten physics once. The team exchanged glances and backed away to a safe distance. Sarah activated the prototype. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the air began to shimmer with visible energy patterns, colors that should not exist in normal space. The quantum resonance generator hummed at a frequency that made my bones vibrate. The energy readings on the monitors began climbing. 50% efficiency, 60%, 70%. The numbers kept rising, far beyond what should be theoretically possible. When they stabilized at 94% efficiency, the room fell silent. Vexus spoke first, his voice hollow with shock. "That is not possible. You cannot capture dimensional bleed-off. It exists outside our space-time framework." Sarah was grinning widely, that human expression of triumph. "You can if you change your framework. I told you. Acoustic principles. We are not capturing energy that bleeds off. We are preventing it from bleeding off in the first place by creating a standing wave pattern that resonates with dimensional boundaries." The revelation, the success of the prototype, attracted attention from across the station. Within days, Sarah's lab was visited by the station administrator, the chief engineer, and representatives from 3 different research institutes. Everyone wanted to know how a first-year student had improved on technology that had been considered optimal for decades. But it was Dr. Zentik who asked the question that changed everything. He arrived late one evening, finding Sarah alone in the lab, running endless variations on her harmonic dampener design. "Miss Chen," he said, his tentacles curling in what I had learned was a gesture of deep thought. "I have been studying your work extensively, both the wormhole equations and this energy project. I have a question that has been troubling me." The demonstration. I arranged a special lecture where Sarah would present her solution to the entire physics department. The auditorium was packed with 300 professors and advanced students, all curious about the human who had solved the unsolvable. Sarah stood at the podium, looking tiny compared to the massive holographic displays behind her. She did not seem nervous, just focused. "Thank you for coming," she began. "I understand my solution has caused some controversy. so I will walk you through it step by step. For the next hour, she explained her reasoning with perfect clarity. She broke down complex concepts into understandable pieces, using analogies and examples that even first-year students could follow. When professors challenged her assumptions, she calmly demonstrated why their objections were based on outdated models. Halfway through, she made an offhand comment that changed everything. This approach is similar to what we use for predicting weather patterns on Earth, multivariable chaos systems with quantum uncertainty. We start learning this in middle school. Middle school, human children studying chaos theory and quantum mechanics as standard curriculum. Dr. Jendek raised his tentacle. Miss Chen, are you saying this level of mathematical sophistication is normal for human students? Sarah looked surprised by the question. Well, yes. I mean, I am not even the best student from my high school. My friend Jason is way better at theoretical physics. He is studying at the Mars Institute. The auditorium erupted in shocked whispers. There were more of them. Thousands of humans, all trained in this impossible educational system, all capable of thinking in ways that broke our understanding of learning capacity. A new understanding. After the presentation, I found Sarah in the garden sector, sitting on a bench and writing in her notebook. I approached carefully, still trying to process the implications of what her existence meant for galactic science. The project begins. 3 months after Sarah's presentation, the physics department was still trying to process the implications of her work. Her wormhole equations had been verified by institutes across the galaxy, and the theoretical energy requirements were so much lower than expected that actual construction might be possible within our lifetimes. But Sarah had moved on to her next project, and this one was even more ambitious. She approached me during office hours, carrying that worn backpack and wearing an expression I had learned to recognize as, "I have an idea that will terrify you." "Professor Kelkseth," she said, "I would like to propose a collaborative research project." I set down the holographic star charts I had been reviewing. "What kind of project?" She pulled out her notebook, which was now even more worn and covered with sticky notes in multiple colors. "I have been studying the station's power systems, and I noticed something interesting. You are using quantum resonance generators, correct?" "Yes, standard technology. They have powered the station for 40 cycles without major issues." Sarah flipped through her notes. "Right, but they are incredibly inefficient. You are losing about 60% of the energy to dimensional bleed-off." "I think I know how to fix that." My scales rippled with concern. "Miss Chen, those systems were designed by the greatest engineers in the galaxy. They're as efficient as physically possible." She gave me that look again, the one that said he was about to prove me wrong. That is what they said about the wormhole problem. Building the team. Against my better judgment, I approved her project proposal. Sarah needed a team, and she chose carefully. She recruited Vexus, a morphling engineer with 12 cycles of experience. Korthal, a Vexlorian quantum specialist who had been impressed by her wormhole solution. And surprisingly, Zix, a young Krillian student who barely spoke, but had an intuitive understanding of energy fields. "May I join you?" I asked. She looked up and smiled. "Of course, Professor Kelkseth." I settled onto the bench, adjusting my posture for Earth standard gravity, which felt heavy even here in the controlled environment. "I owe you an apology. I assumed your solution was impossible because I could not imagine how anyone could think that way." Sarah closed her notebook. "It is okay. I have noticed that most species here think very logically, very structured. Humans are different. We have to be. Our planet taught us to think creatively or die." "Tell me about that," I said. "What is it like growing up on Earth?" She looked distant, remembering. "Earth is beautiful and terrifying. When I was 7, a storm destroyed our house. We rebuilt. When I was 10, I got lost in the mountains for 3 days. I survived by remembering my training. When I was 13, I had to treat my brother's broken leg because we were too far from help." Each sentence was delivered calmly, describing situations that would traumatize most species. For her, they were just childhood memories. "Humans learn physics early because we have to," she continued. "Understanding trajectory helps you avoid dangerous animals. Understanding pressure helps you swim safely. Understanding thermodynamics keeps you from freezing or overheating. Science is not just academic for us. It is survival. I finally understood. Humans did not just study physics, they lived it every single day. Their entire species was one vast experiment in applied science conducted on a planet that demanded excellence or death. I have a question, Sarah said suddenly. Why did you assign that problem if you thought it was unsolvable? I considered my answer carefully. To teach humility. To show students that some questions have no answers. She frowned slightly. But every question has an answer. You just have to be willing to change your perspective to find it. That is what my parents taught me. And there it was, the fundamental difference between humans and the rest of the galaxy. We accepted limitations, they did not. We said impossible, they said not yet. The galaxy was going to change, and I had a front row seat to watch it happen. What is it this time? I asked, almost afraid to know. She showed me calculations that made my vision blur. Faster than light communication without quantum entanglement. I think I can use harmonic resonance patterns to transmit information through dimensional folds. Of course she could, because she was human, and humans did not understand the meaning of impossible. Sarah, I said, I want you to know that having you here has changed this institution fundamentally. You have shown us that our limitations were self-imposed, that the universe still has mysteries we never imagined. She smiled that warm human smile. Thanks, Professor. But honestly, I'm just doing what my parents taught me. Stay curious. Ask questions and never ever accept that something cannot be done just because no one has done it yet. The galaxy was changing, one human student at a time. And I realized that I was not terrified anymore. I was excited to see what came next. Because if Sarah Chen, an adequate student by Earth standards, could revolutionize energy systems and rewrite physics, what would happen when the truly exceptional humans arrived? The answer, I suspected, would be extraordinary. High school. A human educational institution for children. She had created revolutionary mathematical frameworks based on children's education. That is not possible, I said firmly. This problem has defeated the greatest minds in the galaxy for centuries. She pulled out her notebook and flipped through pages covered in dense calculations. With respect, Professor, maybe they were approaching it wrong. I noticed that everyone assumes space-time is the primary variable. But what if we treat it as a secondary effect of quantum probability fields? Then the energy requirements drop by several orders of magnitude. She was describing concepts that should not exist, using terminology she had apparently invented, and making it sound simple. The investigation. I brought her solution to the faculty review board, a group of the most brilliant scientists in the galaxy. We spent 3 days analyzing every line of her work, searching for errors or logical fallacies. We found none. In fact, we found elegance and insight that made us question our own expertise. Dr. Gentic, a physicist who had won the Galactic Medal of Science twice, stared at the equations with what I can only describe as existential horror. If this is correct, and I believe it is, then humans have fundamentally different ways of processing reality. How is this possible? I decided to investigate Earth more thoroughly. What I discovered made me understand why Sarah's solution was not just impressive, but inevitable. Earth's gravity was 30% higher by galactic standard. Humans spent their entire lives being pulled down by a force that would exhaust most species. Their atmosphere was rich in oxygen, a highly reactive element that aged their cells constantly. They lived on a planet covered 70% by water that could drown them, surrounded by thousands of species that could poison, infect, or consume them. But the truly shocking part was how they learned. Human children were expected to understand complex mathematics by age 10. They studied multiple scientific disciplines simultaneously. They were taught to question everything, to challenge established ideas, to think creatively about problems. Earth did not just produce survivors. It produced problem solvers who were trained from birth to handle impossible situations. The impossible test. A new student arrives. A galactic institute of advanced sciences floated peacefully in the Andromeda sector, a massive station where the brightest minds from 400 civilizations came to study the mysteries of the universe. I am Professor Kelkseth, head of the physics department, and I have taught here for 60 cycles. I have seen students from water worlds, gas giants, and crystalline planets, but nothing prepared me for the day a human walked into my classroom. Her name was Sarah Chen. The registration file listed her home as Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld in the outer spiral arb. I barely glanced at it. Deathworld classifications meant little to me back then. I assumed it was just another bureaucratic label for planets with slightly higher gravity or more active weather patterns. Sarah was small by galactic standards, maybe 1.6 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back in something humans call a ponytail. She wore simple clothing and carried a worn backpack that looked like it had traveled across several star systems. When she entered the lecture hall, she smiled politely at the other students and chose a seat in the middle row, not too far forward, not hiding in the back. The challenge begins. My course was called Advanced Theoretical Physics, and it had a reputation across the galaxy. Only the top students could pass. The curriculum covered quantum mechanics, space-time manipulation, and theoretical wormhole construction. Most species sent their best and brightest, students who had been studying physics since they hatched or budded or whatever their reproductive process involved. On the first day, I always gave the same speech. This course will challenge everything you think you know about reality. Half of you will drop out within the first month. Only the truly exceptional will remain. The students looked nervous, all except Sarah, who was busy writing something in a physical notebook. Not a holographic display or neural interface, but actual paper with a primitive writing instrument. Strange, but I had seen stranger study habits. The real test came on day 5. I presented the class with an impossible problem, one that had stumped physicists for 3 centuries. Calculate the exact energy requirements to open a stable wormhole between 2 points separated by 50 light years, accounting for dark matter interference and quantum fluctuations. Sarah looked up from her calculations. Of course, Doctor. How many other humans can do what you do? The question hung in the air like a gravitational anomaly. Sarah considered it carefully, chewing on her primitive pen in a gesture I found oddly endearing. Honestly, most humans who study physics. I'm good at it, but I'm not exceptional by Earth standards. My professors back home would probably call my work adequate or shows promise. Dr. Gentek's skin color shifted through several emotional spectrums. You are saying that solving centuries-old problems and revolutionizing energy systems is considered merely adequate on Earth? Well, yeah. I mean, human scientists split the atom in the 1940s, landed on our moon in the 1960s, built quantum computers in the 2020s, and achieved fusion power in the 2050s. All of that happened before we even knew aliens existed. My work is just building on foundations that have been developing for centuries. The implications hit me like a physical force. Humans had developed advanced physics in complete isolation, with no guidance from the galactic community, on a planet actively trying to kill them. They have not just survived Earth, they had thrived on it, driven by curiosity and the refusal to accept limitations. The conspiracy uncovered. The next morning, I received an encrypted message, requesting my presence at an emergency faculty board meeting. When I arrived, the room was filled with senior professors and administrators, all looking distinctly uncomfortable. Chancellor Vorfix, the station's highest authority, activated a holographic display showing Earth's location in the galaxy. We have a situation. The human student's success has prompted us to review Earth's classification status more thoroughly. What we discovered is concerning. The display shifted, showing reports that had been buried in bureaucratic archives for decades. Earth was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld 75 years ago when we first made contact. However, the assessment was incomplete. The evaluators focused on environmental hazards and failed to properly assess the native species. Another professor, whose name I did not know, activated a different set of data. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Their species literally ran prey to death over distances of 30 or 40 kilometers. They have endurance that exceeds 90% of known species. The room fell silent. This problem had no known solution. I assigned it every year to teach students about limitations, about accepting that some questions could not be answered with our current understanding. Breaking the rules. The other students worked in groups, sharing theories and calculations through their neural networks. The Vexlorians used their 6 brains to tackle different aspects simultaneously. The Morphlings shifted their body chemistry to enhance cognitive function. Everyone applied their species' unique advantages to the problem. Sarah sat alone, scribbling in her notebook with that primitive pen. She did not use the quantum computers available to all students. She did not join any study groups. She just wrote and calculated, occasionally pausing to stare at the ceiling with intense concentration. After 2 weeks, the assignment was due. As expected, every student submitted partial solutions or admitted defeat. The Vexlorian team came closest, reaching 73% theoretical completion before their calculations collapsed into paradoxes. I praised their effort and moved on. Then I opened Sarah's submission. My 3 hearts stopped beating in sequence. She had solved it completely. Her solution was elegant, revolutionary, and absolutely terrifying. She had not just answered the question, she had rewritten fundamental assumptions about space-time itself. The mathematics were flawless, building on principles I had never seen before. The confrontation. I called her to my office the next day. The room was designed for comfort, with gravity control for different species and atmosphere adjustments. Sarah walked in looking calm, almost confused about why I had summoned her. "Sit down, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to discuss your assignment." She sat, placing her worn backpack on the floor. "Was there a problem with my solution, Professor?" "A problem? I wanted to laugh, but my species does not have that capability." "Miss Chen, your solution is impossible. The mathematics you used do not exist in any known framework. Where do you find them?" Sarah tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. "I did not find them anywhere. I created them. The existing frameworks were not working, so I developed new ones based on principles I learned in high school." "No," I said honestly. "It is terrifying and magnificent in equal measure. The galaxy has been stable for 10,000 years, Sarah. Stable because we understand our limitations and work within them. Humans do not have that instinct. You push boundaries until they break." She returned her attention to the plants, making a few more notes. "My grandmother used to say that humans are the universe's way of asking what if. We look at everything and wonder how it could be different, better, more interesting. It is not aggression or arrogance. It is curiosity taken to its logical extreme. And if that curiosity destabilizes everything we have built," Sarah closed her notebook and stood up, "then you build something better. That is what we do. That is what we have always done." Moving forward, the faculty board made their decision the following week. Earth's classification was officially changed from Class 12 Deathworld to Class 1 Adaptive Development World, a new category created specifically for them. Human students would still be welcome at the Institute, but with additional oversight and integration support. Sarah's research project was approved for station-wide implementation. Her harmonic dampeners would be installed across all power systems, increasing efficiency by an estimated 40% and reducing energy costs dramatically. She was credited as the primary researcher, the youngest student ever to receive such recognition. But the real change was subtler, deeper. Professors began questioning long-held assumptions. Students started approaching problems from new angles. The entire institute began to shift, adapting to the reality that humans represented not a threat, but an opportunity to evolve. I found Sarah one last time before the end of the term, still in her lab, working on what she called just a small side project. More data appeared, each revelation more shocking than the last. Human reaction times were in the top 5% galactically. Their pattern recognition abilities were off the charts. Their capacity for creative problem solving exceeded every standardized test designed by the galactic community. But the most concerning aspect, Chancellor Vorfix continued, is their educational system. Humans begin training in advanced mathematics then sciences at age 5. By age 18, when they reach physical maturity, they have been solving complex problems for 13 years, continuously, without pause. Dr. Zentik spoke up. "I have reviewed Earth's academic literature. They have something called doctoral programs, where humans spend years pushing the boundaries of knowledge, often working 80 or 90 hours per week. They consider this normal. Expected even. The room absorbed this information in horrified silence. Humans were not just survivors. They were a species that had weaponized education itself, turning curiosity into a survival trait. "So what do we do?" someone asked. The decision. I found Sarah that afternoon in the station's garden sector, her usual retreat when she needed to think. She was studying local plant life, making notes in her worn notebook about their photosynthesis patterns. "They are going to change my classification, are they not?" she asked without looking up. I settled beside her, always amazed by her perception. "How did you know?" "I have noticed the way people look at me lately. Not just impressed, but worried. They are starting to realize what Earth really is." She finally looked at me, those human eyes showing depths of understanding that no first-year student should possess. "They are scared because if I can do this, how many more humans can do the same?" Approximately 11 billion on Earth, according to current population data. Plus colonies on Mars, Europa, and 3 asteroid settlements. Sarah smiled sadly. "And you are wondering if letting humans into the galactic community was a mistake." "Not a mistake," I said carefully, "but perhaps something we were not prepared for. Your species does not just think differently. You think faster, more creatively, and with a persistence that most species cannot match. You turn impossible problems into challenges. You see limitations as temporary obstacles." "Is that so wrong?"